Okay, and we're live. What's up, guys? I'm doing a live stream today because this was my first week back at school, and I actually intended to create a video for you guys, but it was a pretty busy first week, which is good. It's keeping me active, learning a lot, but it also means that I didn't have a ton of time this week for video editing and for planning videos and stuff. So we're doing a live stream today. And hello, I see we now have a few spectators. Is that what you call them? In French, they're called spectateurs, but in English, I guess they're called viewers. Anyways, feel free to comment or leave questions or anything. That's my favorite part about doing these live streams. Hello, hi. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Is that a Russian name? Ukrainian, something Slavic? Anyways, yes, as I was saying, it's my first week back at school. I'm having a pretty good week. It seems like it's going to be a good semester. I'm taking 2 French classes this semester. I'm also taking a first language acquisition class. So most of you know I am majoring in linguistics. And unfortunately, this semester I'm only taking 1 linguistics class, first language acquisition, just because I wasn't able to fit other ones into my schedule. So I'm taking a few science classes, astronomy and paleontology, which I think both of which are going to be fun. But the classes I really wanted to talk about in this video are my French classes. So I'm taking a French class called Reading French Texts. Sorry if my pronunciation of that was weird. That's a hard word to pronounce in English. So the word text, but plural. So texts. How many? Let me see. Texts. Yeah. That word has 4 consonants at the end of it. Texts. So anyways, that's a fun word to pronounce. I'm taking a class called Reading French Texts, and another class called Cinema in the French-Speaking World. So these, as far as French classes go, these seem like pretty. They don't seem like really intensive classes, you know. I'm not taking like advanced French grammar or French syntax or anything like that. It's essentially reading books in French and watching movies in French. And, you know, it's just the first week, but so far in my movies class, we haven't watched any movies. We have read a book in French. Now, granted, it's a book that they based a movie off of, and so we're going to watch the movie. But so far, all I've done is just read books in French for my French classes. And the book that we had to read for my French cinema class is called La Princesse. What is it called? La Princesse de Montpensier. And it's a very old book. It's like, I think it's almost 400 years old. So it's from the 1600s. And as you can imagine, you know, languages change over the years, and sometimes it's difficult to read things that are 400 years old, even in my native language. You know, you read books that are from 17th century England, or, you know, 16th century. That stuff's difficult to read, but especially in my second language, or my third language, which would be French. So it's difficult. You know, you have to kind of plow through not only all the cultural differences and try to understand the historical context, but you also just have to deal with different words and different manners of speaking. Hello, Rasmus A. Is that how you say your name? Rasmus A, I presume. Thanks for commenting. Hi. So it's difficult. And my professor, so this is a very old book. It's well beyond copyright laws. So my professor uploaded a PDF file of this text. Let me see if I can find it for you in here. This text of La Princesse de Montpensier. And man, it's just an intimidating book to read. It's like a PDF file of, you know, of an actual scan of the book, and geez, it's just difficult. So what I decided to do, I got smart, used my brain. I went online and found, so my professor uploaded a PDF file of the book, but it was a PDF of literally just scanned pictures of the book. I went online and I found a PDF file that was like an actual text version of the book, and I uploaded it to LingQ. And I just did a review on LingQ, so if you haven't seen that, you should watch that. I think that was my last video, actually. So I put it here. I don't know if you can really see my iPad. I put it here in LingQ. Sorry, it's getting kind of a glare in there if you can't really see. Learn Icelandic. Let me see. Yeah, so yep, so there's my homework right there in LingQ, and it just makes it a whole heck of a lot easier, especially with you know, all the old words and stuff and different contexts and things that I may not have picked up on if I was just reading the PDF that my professor sent. All right, let me read this comment really quick. Learn Icelandic then. Icelandic has hardly have changed over the years, so you won't have much difficulties even reading books which are 500 or 1,000 years old. Yeah, I know. Some languages are like that. Certain languages change less than others, and I'm not sure why that is, but you know, so supposedly Italian is closer to the original Vulgar Latin than French is. And likewise, I don't speak Greek. I tried learning Greek several times throughout my life and never really got that far. But my understanding is that if someone speaks modern Greek today, they're able to read ancient Greek without too much difficulty. And so that's 200 years of language change. Whereas in the English language, you know, for some of us, it's a little difficult to read Shakespeare, which is like 500-600 years ago. And it's just straight up impossible to read Beowulf, which is like 8-9 centuries ago, 10 centuries, maybe like 1,000 years ago. So I don't know. It's strange how languages change like that. Anyways, back to LingQ. Yeah, so it was just a cool thing. Since I had been spending so much time using LingQ over the summer, and you know, I went to LangFest and talked to a lot of people that were really excited about using LingQ. It's cool when my language learning activities, my extracurricular things, you know, my YouTube channel, or the people that I talk to outside of school, when all of that can accumulate and give me some kind of tools that I can use to hack my school career, right? And I don't mean hack in a bad way, but just I can streamline it, right? I don't have to spend as much energy and resources and time, honestly, doing my homework for school, because I've found shortcuts, and you know, I've found things that can just make it easier to kind of streamline my way through my college courses. So anytime you are able to think of something like that, or find some way that you're able to, I don't want to say make it through college with less effort, but essentially that's what I'm saying. So I'm going to say that anytime you can find some manner of making it through your university courses with less effort, but not learning less, and not, you know, I'm not trying to slack off my courses, and I'm not trying to I still want to receive the maximal amount of benefit in learning from these courses. But if I can do it in a way that's less costly to me, as far as time and energy, then I'm going to do it. So LingQ has just been an excellent resource for that. And I've been recommending it to all my classmates. I just say, it costs $9 a month or something like that, but you're already paying like $150 per textbook, right? Or at least, at the very least, you're paying like $30 per textbook, right? So a month or a 3-month subscription to LingQ is still going to cost less than your cheapest textbook. But it has huge potential to help save a ton of time and a ton of effort and a ton of frustration. Because when you're reading French texts, just for the benefit of the people that have logged into this video since we started, I have all these French texts that I have to read for French class. And my professor just gave us this long PDF file of these ancient not ancient, but Enlightenment era novels that we have to read, and it's just difficult, and especially in your second language, that's hard. So I found the PDF files online, since they're old enough to be outside of copyright law issues, and I just uploaded them into LingQ. And now when I come across these words that are out of date or not taught in contemporary language learning programs, I'm just able to just click on the word, right? And then it gives me a definition right there, and it's so much easier. My professor recommended having a French English dictionary handy for when you run across words that you don't recognize. Oh, it's so much work. It takes so much longer. And honestly, as I'm reading, I don't want to take the time to stop reading my book and then break my train of thought and go back to a dictionary, flip through, find the F section, and then go through alphabetically and find the word, and then look at the word, and then have to try to think about it and try to understand the word. Close your dictionary, go back to the text again, and then you've lost your train of thought. And so now you have to go back to the previous page to try to remember what you had just read, and hope that you still remember the definition of the word by the time you get back to that word again, right? It's just so much easier to put it into LingQ. And last week when I posted my review of LingQ, I had a few people comment. I specifically remember one, but some people have different views of LingQ. And man, I got a little bit of hate on my review LingQ video for recommending LingQ. But I'm telling you, I'm just telling you, it's not a perfect program, but I'm telling you, it has made my life easier. Okay, it just does. All right, well, and here, speaking of people that have nuanced opinions of LingQ, he says, the thing I don't like about LingQ is that we have to choose the right meaning ourselves. When I pay, I expect that they offer more than just a Google Translate like opinion. What do you think about that? Yeah, so the thing you have to remember about LingQ is not in and of itself a program designed to teach you languages. Okay, LingQ is a program that's designed to help you study a language by yourself. It's designed to help you teach yourself a language. Okay, this is not Duolingo, where the experts in the language put in all the stuff, all the lessons and exercises, and force you to learn that language. It's an aid to help you learn the language better. So before LingQ, I used to make my own flashcards. Okay, but that doesn't mean that using flashcards is bad because I didn't have someone make my flashcards for me. I put in the work, I put in the effort, I looked up the definitions of these words, and I reaped the benefit, right? Because that was my self-study time. And the same thing is true of LingQ. When you make your links, sometimes they offer definitions of words that other people have used, and that's useful because that's just a handy shortcut. But an important thing to remember when you're using LingQ is that the responsibility is on you to make sure that you're learning your language. All they're doing is just providing you with the platform to do it. Okay, Andy says, I'm using LingQ to learn new vocabulary in preparation for listening to news in French, or to learn news vocabulary in preparation for listening to news in French. Yeah, really, it's a system that's designed for whatever you want it to be. You know, if you're interested in reading certain texts, then you're gonna develop the vocabulary and the grammar that you need to read those kind of texts, and that's the beauty of it. When you have to choose which definition/translation you want, you can usually tell from context which definition is right for the sentence you're reading, so it's not so bad. Yeah, right. And again, I want to emphasize that my stance is not that LingQ is the perfect resource, right? There's flaws that I don't see how these flaws could be easily corrected, right? Like, I don't know how big their team is at LingQ, but they don't create courses. They don't create different interfaces for each language. Okay, there's just one interface that is LingQ, and then they kind of create different spaces where you can learn different languages, and then you click on the language, and then you're only exposed to material from that language. But the platform, the program itself, just works the exact same way for different languages. And so, it's the same for isolating languages as it is for agglutinating languages, right? Or I'm not sure if I'm using that terminology right, but it's going to be the same for polysynthetic languages. And that leaves a very wide variety. There's a big range of languages that they have to be able to encapsulate and to optimize for. And so really, I don't blame them for not going really specific on one language. For example, I actually brought this up to Steve when I was at LingFest. And you can probably even watch the video because it was live streamed, and it was when Steve did his presentation on it was just an overview of LingQ. And so I think you can watch it on Facebook because it was live streamed on Facebook, I believe, on the LangFest Facebook. I don't think it's up on YouTube yet. But anyways, that's all irrelevant. Anyways, when I was in the workshop, I asked Steve if he ever plans on fixing this one thing about LingQ that just drives me crazy, and that's so I'm learning French, but this would apply to a bunch of other languages too. Spanish, because there's every one verb in Spanish has 1,000 verb conjugations. But let's say I'm using LingQ to learn French, and I run across the word m'appelle, and then there's the word s'appelle, and then there's the word t'appelle, and then there's just the word appel or appeler, and there's others. And this is all the same word, just with a different letter at the beginning and an apostrophe. Okay, so in my mind, it's easy that you would just be able to separate words by an apostrophe, right? And so this is not actually like 8 different words that I have to memorize separately. It's one word just with slight, with different pronouns really at the beginning of the word. And they're always separated by an apostrophe. And I asked him, I was like, why do you count these all as separate words? It seems a little bit misleading to say I learned 8 new words, but really I just learned one word with 8 different pronouns or 8 different, I don't know, contractions, I guess we would say. And he didn't seem like he thought that was really a big deal or that it needed to be changed in any way. And the point that he made was that in order for them to change that in some way, they would have to change it specifically for the French language, right? Because that same rule wouldn't necessarily apply to Russian or Chinese or any of these other languages that you can learn on Link. The fact that you have the little apostrophe separating the pronoun from the root word itself. But really, it's not a huge deal. To me, it's annoying because I don't want the word to be highlighted in blue every time I come across it, right? I just want to learn the word one time and then not have to worry about it again. But it's not a huge deal. It's not detrimental. It doesn't make me dislike Link. If Link was just specific for the French language, then I would probably press him more on that because it is a little bit annoying. But because Link has to be optimized for all these different languages, I can't really hold him to that standard because I'm studying French, and so I want Link to be perfect for my language. I would say Link is about as good as it can be while still being generalized over a bunch of different languages. Okay, now I have a ton of comments here that I didn't read because I was ranting about that. Okay, when you have to choose which definition / translation you want. Yeah, okay, sorry. So this is what got me on that rant anyways. Sometimes it's difficult because certain words mean different things in different concept and different contexts, right? Like the word bank, okay? So if you're learning English, let's say you're learning English on Link, you're probably familiar with the word bank as the place where you store your money. And that's a word you're probably already familiar with. So you're probably going to click the word bank as already known. But then when you're reading a story about someone that's going fishing and they fall down the bank into the river, you're going to be confused. Why is it talking about bank here? So maybe you'll click on it again. And if you look at the little definitions on the side of the page, you'll probably see there's one definition for a bank, which is an institution where you store your money. And then there's another definition, which is like the side of a river or, I don't know, in an embankment. And it's kind of annoying because if I already know the word bank as in the institution, then I don't want to have to turn this into a word that I no longer know just because there's another definition that's rarely used. So like I said, it's annoying. It's not the perfect program. But I can honestly say that as far as language learning programs that I'm aware of now, that I've been exposed to, it seems to be the most useful as far as I can tell. I haven't come across any other language learning platform that I find to be better. They may be out there, but this is not a complaint against Link. I like Link. Okay, hello. The only advantage of Link I see is that you keep track of your known words. A pop-up dictionary does the same thing. For me, Link is a useful resource. So yes, it keeps track of your known words, and that's nice. I really like the aspect of Link where words are highlighted to mean different things. So I really like how words that I'm learning are highlighted in yellow. Okay. That means that those words are going to stand out to me even more as I read through a text, as those words come up again and again and again. All right. Now, if I was reading a physical book, I would still be running across those words. And when those words are not highlighted if it's just a word that I don't recognize, but it doesn't stand out in any way, I'm less likely to pay attention to it. I'm more likely just to skim over it and just not worry about it. So the fact that the words you don't know are highlighted in yellow, that's a benefit to me. Even though I would still recognize, even if it wasn't highlighted, I would still recognize that I don't know the word. Somehow it makes it stand out in my mind a little bit better, and it helps me remember it the next time I come across that word. But I definitely like to have audio and transcripts. They're not easy to come by, especially if the language is not as popular one. Yeah, that's another good thing about Link, that you can listen to the audio while you're also reading it. I find that to be very helpful. Okay, so over time you see fewer and fewer new words per page, and you can feel your progress. Yeah, Andy, I agree with that. That's a good benefit of Link. It is really motivating to see your pages become more and more white as you, that sounded like a racial statement, but it's motivating to see your pages become more and more white, as in have less highlighted words that you don't know as you progress through the language. I really enjoy that. Okay, I agree, that's annoying. If I've already marked a word as known, then see a homonym, I have to mark it again with a different definition. Yep, annoying. Also, Link allows me to highlight phrases such as idioms and learn their definitions. I don't know if pop-up dictionaries can do that. That's another good point. In fact, that's something that Steve actually, he highlights that a lot, that aspect of Link. Because a lot of times, phrases of words will mean something very different than the individual words. So this is, I really believe that Link is better than just your average e-reader in a lot of ways. Okay. Is the sentence translation option any good? I like learning sentences and phrases instead of individual words. Even in my Anki, there are almost always sentences and phrases. Sentence translation. So there's like different modes in Link. Let me take a look at this. So I'm not sure if this is what you were talking about. So you have page mode. What am I doing here? I only use page mode. Yeah, there's page mode, and then there's sentence mode, where it just shows you a single sentence. I'm not really sure why that's a feature, because I don't see that being useful. I never use it, but I don't know. Obviously, someone thought that was a useful feature, so someone uses it. I just prefer to read my whole page because I don't want to constantly be swiping every sentence. But, you know, obviously someone thought that was a useful feature, and if that's what you prefer to do, I don't see a problem with that. Okay, I can track my progress searching fewer and fewer words in the dictionary each time I read. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of Steve Kaufman. Yeah, it's just more convenient. Honestly, it's just more convenience to have the app track the words that you know. Okay, using Link to get to a new level where I can comfortably consume content in French and Spanish. Yeah, Link is just great for that. And so Steve, if you've ever watched a video by Steve, you've probably heard him talk about Stephen Krashen. And I had to learn a lot about Stephen Krashen in some of my university classes for second language acquisition, and specifically TESOL, which is teaching English as a second language. My TESOL professor, actually, I think she worked with Stephen Krashen, and so she was a big fan. We had to read a bunch of articles about him. Apparently, he wrote a book and a bunch of articles about what he calls free voluntary reading, which is not reading that is designed, it's not reading that's mandated by a teacher. It's reading that you do for fun. And he says that reading for fun is possibly the single best way of acquiring a new language. And so there's no better way to do that than Link, as far as I'm aware. Okay, how can you know the pronunciation of a word you've never heard before? Okay, how can you know the pronunciation of a word you've never heard before in languages like English? So English is difficult. Okay, because there's not a strong correlation between spelling of words and pronunciation of words. Okay, you take a language like Spanish, where if you see how a word is spelt, then you probably you just know automatically how it's supposed to be pronounced. And then you take languages like French, where there's a little bit more play with words, but there's also rules, right? Like you just know that the last 3 or 4 letters of the word are just not going to be pronounced for some reason. And if you have a group of 5 vowels altogether, it's just going to be 1 vowel, right? So French is weird like that, but there's also rules that help you understand the pronunciation. English, you can get some of that, right? Like if you see the letter T, you know that it's not going to make an M sound, okay? You can be pretty sure that it's going to create a sound of just a few different possible phonemes that we would group together under the T letter, but it's difficult. And all you can do is just expose yourself to the language a lot, which is, since we're on the subject of LingQ is a great option for doing that because you're listening to the language while you read it. So you're linking your audio exposure with your written visual exposure to the spelling of the words. And all you can do is just get a lot of repetitions and spend a lot of time pushing through. Okay, if you feel like you're not making progress in LingQ, the LingQ system gives you really good statistics on your activity, and that's really motivating. Yeah, I don't know why these little, like Duolingo gives you rubies or something, or what do they call them? What are those things called in Duolingo? The money is literally the currency in Duolingo. You can give them to other people by clicking on their comments and stuff. I don't know why the little rubies in Duolingo are like a motivating factor. Like, why do I want to earn more of them? But for some reason I do. A lingot. Yes, that's what thank you for that. The lingots or lingots. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm going to call it a lingot. So why is it a motivating factor for me to earn more of these things that I can't do anything with? I don't know. I can give them to other people, or you can like buy different clothes for your owl. And then also they have streaks. So like, they'll send you messages, don't ruin your streak, or you can buy a streak freeze, right? And for some reason, streaks are really important to us. And psychologically, I don't know why we're motivated to continue to want to put in the efforts to keep a streak or to earn more lingots. But that's not important. It's not important why we're motivated to do it. If those things can help you want to keep practicing more and to stay, consistent with your practicing, then as far as I'm concerned, it's a great system. Okay, when you click on a word, you can choose both an individual word or a phrase, sentence as a whole. I'm asking about that. Yeah, okay. So that's a big help. I don't do that. Honestly, I don't do it as much as I should because I think it's a really useful feature of LingQ. I usually click on individual words, but there are some things in language that just don't make sense when you look at the individual words. Okay, now obviously we have idiomatic phrases like it was raining cats and dogs, okay? And everyone understands that the language you're learning has idioms like that, and it has nothing to do with cats and it has nothing to do with dogs. But then there's other things that you say in English and in French or in whatever language you're learning. Like, for example, if you say, I couldn't care less, or hold on, what do I want to say? Okay, if you're talking to someone who doesn't speak English or they're learning English, and they tell you something and you say, I could care less, what does that sound like you're saying to them? If you say, I could care less, that means I care about it, right? But the sentiment that you're actually trying to communicate is that you don't care. That's what you mean when you say, I could care less. And it's a strange thing, because really what we should be saying is, I couldn't care less. I don't care at all, so it's not possible for me to care less, right? That phrase just doesn't make sense at all. Another one that comes to my mind is in French. My French professor, when I was in France this past year, asked us, what does it mean if a French speaker says sans doute, which means in English that would mean without a doubt or without doubt, right? I can't think of a sentence that would use this phrase, sans doute. C'est sans doute le meilleur, right? It's without a doubt the best. And so for us English speakers, my professor asked us, he said, what does this phrase mean in English? Or in what does this French phrase mean? And we're like, it means you're 100% sure of something, right? If there's no doubt about it, then it means you're certain, you're sure. And he goes, actually, what the phrase sans doute means is avec doute. Because you're actually not 100% sure that this thing is going to happen. You just think it's going to happen. So apparently in French, the word sans doute means something along the lines of probably, okay? And if you think about it, we do that in English as well. If you say, oh, don't worry, I'm sure everything will be fine, you're not actually sure, right? Sure is usually synonymous with certain, but we also use this word to mean probably. Like, everything will probably be fine. I believe everything will be fine. So all that to say, a lot of times you can't take individual words in a phrase and come to the meaning that the author intended to communicate. You have to take the whole phrase and you have to understand how that phrase is used in context by native speakers. Streaks can be demotivating because once you break your streak, it can be hard to resume studying because you're afraid you'll break your streak again. Yeah, that's true. So the fact, my evidence, I don't have strong evidence that streaks are definitely the best way to motivate you to keep studying your language. But as evidence of that, I would cite the fact that almost every language learning program out there uses streaks to motivate you. Duolingo does it, Memrise does it, LingQ does it. Those are the main ones that I'm familiar with. But all of the other, I'm sure most of the other apps probably also use streaks to motivate you to keep going. And these are people that do their research because this is how they make money, by people continuing to use their apps. So I would say, based on that evidence, that they have a motivation to use the best technique to motivate you to keep learning on their platform. So and I can just say, in my experience, I have also been motivated to practice every day because I don't want to break my streak. Now, like you say, maybe there is a downside. Like, once you accidentally do break your streak, then you might be less motivated to keep going. I don't know. Okay, French is a very idiomatic language, even in news articles, so I'm using the phrase feature more and more. Yep, phrase feature is great. Okay. Saw some people even crying for losing their streak. And I'm always like, why is a streak such a big deal? Yeah. See, for me, I've never had a streak of more than, I'm not a streak junkie like some people are, okay? And I know I'm kind of, you're gonna laugh at me for this, but this is my telephone, okay? I'm stuck in the year 2006. Meaning that if I go somewhere, if I go camping for the weekend, I don't have Wi-Fi, then I can't maintain a streak. So my streaks only last for as long as I don't go camping, or as long as I don't go somewhere without internet access. There are some people who have 2018 phones, and wherever they are, they can be sitting in the passenger seat of the car doing Duolingo, or they could be, they could be sitting around the campfire at the campsite doing LingQ, right? And there are people that have like streaks of over 2 years, and I could see that being a really big deal for you if you accidentally forget to do it one day and you ruin your 600-day streak. Okay. Yeah, the word doute in French has strange nuances. Yeah, tell me about it. Okay. That's a problem with us polyglots in general, but I still consider Steve a better polyglot than Benny Lewis. Steve focuses on input and Benny on output. Yeah, so I wouldn't consider Steve to be a better polyglot than Benny, and I wouldn't consider his method to be better. To me, it depends on your goals. Okay, there's some goals that are better suited to other practices. Okay, Benny is pretty upfront about his method, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Benny Lewis, he takes a stance that you should start speaking from day one, as soon as you start learning the language. But he's also coming to this from the perspective that you probably want to use the language to interact with people in real life situation product. But I feel like with Steve, it's more about learning a language for the sake of learning a language. And I could be wrong, he's not a one-dimensional person, he probably has multifaceted views on this. But he's learning Farsi or something, right? And I don't know, I can't imagine that he's wanting to learn Farsi for the sake of when he runs into Farsi speakers in the store. So he just has different goals than Benny. Benny's all about traveling and enriching your life by meeting new people and by having new experiences. Hi, LB or IB, whatever your name is. Hi, thanks for joining us. And for Benny's purposes, his system works better, right? If you're not worried about learning to become literate in the language and you just want to go have a meaningful conversation with someone, or just make some kind of human connection in the country that you're traveling to, then Benny's method is much better. I've heard Steve say before that he doesn't even start trying to speak until he has some large number of words on, registered on Link. And that's fine if that's his goal. If he's not worried about traveling somewhere and making a fool of himself while he speaks, while he tries to cobble together broken sentences. But that's Benny's technique, is don't worry about being right. Don't worry about sounding like a fool. Don't worry about having an accent. Don't worry about proper grammar. Just start to speak, and eventually all that stuff will start to come as you get better. As you speak more and more and practice more. And I agree. I agree. If you're traveling to Paraguay for 2 weeks, learning 300 words in Guarani and then just trying to start interacting with the humans who live there, who speak the language, you're probably not interested in becoming fluent in Guarani and I don't know, reading great works of literature in that language, if they even exist. You're probably interested in just making some kind of human connection, right? And even if you sound like a fool trying to speak it, usually people don't care. Usually people are much happier to hear you try to speak their language to them than they are, than they're worried about you making some kind of grammar mistake. Okay, that's kind of a typically Western worry that we have, right? If you grew up in the rainforest and you've never seen a dictionary and you never took a class for the language that you speak, then the concept of making errors in your speech probably sounds very foreign to you. And you would probably recognize that that people who don't speak your native language, they'll speak different than you, but you're not going to be worried about the errors that they make. Okay, Andy Roberts. Okay, Crescent. Crescent says talking is not practicing. What do you think of that? Yeah, this goes back to the input versus output. And again, it depends on what your goals are. To me, I think talking is extremely important. And yes, I am aware that Crescent is all about the input. He says the language is only acquired by lots of comprehensible and meaningful input, and it's not learned by drilling or any of that stuff. And it also depends what level you want to learn the language to, because I think grammar drills and stuff are valuable. And I think that if you don't open your mouth and speak, you're not going to learn to communicate in that language. I mean, this is obvious, right? I don't think anyone really contests that. You have to speak in order to learn the language, in order to learn to communicate. So that's not really a point of contention. It's the disagreement would be if you that Benny is all the way on one extreme and Crescent and Steve Kaufman are on the other extreme, right? But they wouldn't argue that both of those two things are helpful and beneficial and necessary, both the output and the input side. Is that okay? Active learning is not fun and easy. It's going to feel like a brain wreck. To be honest, I find it to be fun when I only know a little bit of a language and I have to force myself to not worry about making a fool of myself, right? You have to force yourself to get into the mindset where you're not worried about making mistakes. You just want to talk and you just want to speak to people and you want to communicate and you want to have a good time. And in order to do all that, you just have to start with the understanding that you're not worried about making mistakes. And you're going to have a patient interlocutor, because they're also going to have to start with the understanding that in order to have some kind of interaction, they're just not going to have to worry about you speaking perfectly. Fortunately, most people don't care about that already. It's usually me. It's usually the person themselves, myself. I'm worried about making errors, right? The other person that I'm talking to isn't going to think that I'm an idiot because I conjugated my verb wrong, because they know that it's my second language. And so, yeah, a lot of times that fear is one-sided. That stigma against making errors. And maybe that depends on the country or the place. You know, I've heard that Parisians are very unforgiving of foreigners speaking poor French. In my experience, I didn't really notice that when I lived in Paris. But, you know, I also just don't particularly care that much what other people think about me when I make errors in foreign languages. So maybe I just didn't notice as much as other people notice. Okay. Okay, Rasmus says, I don't mean just grammar exercises. Exercises like dictation, shadowing are active learning too, also interpretation. All right, I think I'm losing some of the context because there's conversations going on in here while I'm talking, and I can't read while I talk. Okay, let me see. What are people talking about? This is where Luca Lamparelli, I don't know. I never know how to pronounce that guy's name. I just call him Luca. This is where Luca gives better advice, I think. You make good points, Fington. What is your name anyways? So my real name is Aaron. I go by Fingtem online a lot of times, and there's a long story about that, but it's a Hungarian word. So if you care to do your research, look up the word Fingtam in Hungarian. And I don't even know how to pronounce that in Hungarian. I say it with an an American accent. Look up the word Fingtam in Hungarian, and it'll all make sense. But my real name is Aaron. Okay, Andy says this is where Luca gives better advice. What exactly? I'm not super familiar with Luca's philosophy on language learning. I've done a lot of time listening to Benny and to Steve and to Stephen Krashen. Not super. I've seen some of Luca's videos, but I've never heard him like actually state his stance on where he stands on the spectrum. So if you have any input about see what I did there. If you have anything to say about Luca's opinion, then I guess I'm interested in to hear that. So anyways, okay. Luca advises to use L1. Okay, Luca advises to use L1 to L2 bidirectional translation, like ASML back and forth. Okay. Yeah. Right. So like the Pimsleur method, I guess. I'm a big fan of Pimsleur, actually. I've used Pimsleur French extensively. I mean, like a lot. Okay. So it takes me an hour to get to school, and starting with Pimsleur French 2, and going all the way up to Pimsleur French 5, which each one of those lessons, each one of those series is, I think, 15 CDs, each of which has an hour worth of content on them. So, yep. So Pimsleur 2 is 15 hours. Pimsleur 3 is 15 hours. Pimsleur 4, 15 hours. Okay, so that's 60 hours worth of content. And I've listened to most of those CDs at least 2 times. And some of them I've listened to like 4 or more times. So we're probably talking about at least 100 hours of listening to Pimsleur. And what Pimsleur is they say something in French, you repeat that thing in French. And then they say it again in French, you repeat it again. And then they move on to the next phrase, and they say something in French, and you repeat that thing in French. Either that, or they say something in English and say, how would you say this in French? And then you say it in French, and then they give you the answer. So that's back and forth between, yeah, exactly like you say, between L1 and L2. And I found that to be a great resource, mostly because I have such a long drive back and forth to school. It's an hour long, and one CD in Pimsleur is about approximately an hour. So I would literally just spend my whole commute practicing French. I found that to be great. I really, truly don't think that L1 to L2 is the optimal way for internalizing a language. Okay, I like LingQ because that's only L2. Okay. I'm not a huge fan of Duolingo. I think Duolingo is useful for the first month, maybe the first few months of learning a language. But I'm not a huge fan of learning of translating your L1 into your L2 and vice versa. Not that there's no use to it, not that there's no value to that. Obviously, clearly, if this is what Luca advises, and I'm gonna have to watch some of Luca's videos now that we're talking about this, because I would rather take his word on what his stance is. But apparently, if this is what Luca advises, he's a very accomplished polyglot. So it's not easy to dismiss what he says. especially when I've had such good experience using Pimsleur. I think Pimsleur specifically has been really, really good for my accent. Okay. And for learning certain colloquialisms and stuff. Okay, problem with Steve's method, or problem with Kaufman's method is it can be hard to find enough interesting, comprehensible input. I use LingQ, but get bored very easily. Chatting with people is much more fun. True. Yeah. That is, okay, Steve Bickles, that is a valid criticism. I also found myself getting quite bored with the content that is already available on LingQ. Okay. The solution to that obviously is you're not limited just to the content that comes already available on LingQ. That's why they make LingQ the way it is. It's a platform for you to teach yourself with material that is interesting to you. So Kindle makes it difficult, but if you can buy books on iTunes bookstore, or if you can buy PDF books, there's ways to get around it on Kindle. If you're a little bit tech savvy, or if you can watch a few YouTube videos on, like, what do they call that? The digital protection. If you can remove the digital protection from your ebooks, then any book you can find on Kindle, you can get around the digital protection, and you can use it to learn on LingQ. Which brings me back to the whole topic of this video, of this live stream, is I was compelled to start using LingQ more because there's texts that I just have to read for school. Okay. Novels that maybe I probably wouldn't have read necessarily if I didn't have to read them for school, but because I had to read them for school, I went online, found them. I bought one of them on, not on Kindle. I bought one book on, it's called Journal de Dehors or something. I don't remember the exact title. The Journal of Outside. So I bought that one on a French website that's specific for French ebooks. Okay. And it was like $7 or something. And I input that into LingQ, and gosh, I'm telling you, it just makes life easier to use LingQ when I'm doing my homework. And that's compelling for me to read, if for no other reason other than I have to read it to get a good grade in my French class. But it's something that I would have been reading anyways, so it's easy. I don't have to force myself to use LingQ. I just have to force myself to do my homework, right? But whatever book you enjoy reading, you can find that in your target language, unless you're learning a small minority language. Like, in Steve's case, he's learning Farsi, so he probably is not able to find all the material that he wants to read in Farsi on Audible and on Kindle. But for most of us who are learning more mainstream languages, you can find a lot of material yourself. Now, you may have to pay a little bit, right? Ebooks aren't always free unless you're buying the ebook version of a book that was written 100 years ago. But it's worth it, right? You're going to invest money in learning your language. There are free apps and free resources for learning languages, but if we're really serious about comprehensible input and stuff, spending a few bucks on an ebook or on an audiobook is not a huge deal. Okay, there's another guy whose name I can't remember. His advice is more extreme than Luca's. He advises to use 10 books and translate every single sentence in the book and write an L1 and L2 10 times. That's really extreme. And it's hard because there is a balance, because drilling can be effective. That's how you learn instruments. You play your scales every day. When I was learning to play the guitar, I would literally You know, it's difficult to learn chords right away. Do I have a guitar in here? Let me see. Okay. When you're learning your chords on guitar, you're gonna put your fingers there for a G. And then now that I play the guitar, I've been playing guitar for a while, it's just very natural. My fingers know exactly where to go when I want to go to a C. Okay, but when you're first learning the guitar, it's not in any way natural. Your fingers don't want to go where you're telling them to go. Okay, so what I would literally do when I was learning to play guitar is I would painstakingly put each finger on the string, and then I would strum the G chord, and then I would have to go to a C, and I would painstakingly put my fingers there, and then play that chord. And I would go back and forth between those two chords. If I was watching TV or something, I'd turn the volume up real loud on the TV, and I would go back and forth between those two for literally 45 minutes, half an hour, something like ridiculous amounts of time. But in that amount of time, you're going back and forth, 10,000 times or something between those two chords. It probably wouldn't have been 10,000, when you first start, because it takes you 15 seconds to go between the two chords. But, even if you change chords 5 times in a minute, you're still getting a bunch of repetitions of going between those two chords over and over and over and over and over again. And not just a few times. We're not talking about just going back and forth 10 times, right? We're talking about hundreds of times back and forth. But I'm telling you, if you do that 1,000 times, you start to build up the muscle memory. Okay? It's all it is just brute force and pushing through and just not stopping and just getting a lot of repetitions. Now, I do want to talk about that for a minute as it applies to language learning, because it's not necessarily the same thing. Okay, when I first started really getting involved in learning about language learning, I thought that the more time you spend drilling, the better you will understand the material. Okay, so if we take, for example, flashcards, memorize. We'll say Anki, okay? Memorize or Anki. You have the English word on one side and the Spanish word on another side, because when I was starting this whole language learning process, I was learning Spanish, okay? And so this, to me, is the most it's the most analogous example that I can draw between, or it's the best analogy I can draw between learning the guitar and learning languages. So I had already learned the guitar, and I had learned my process for learning chords, and I thought, well, it'll be the same thing. If I'm going to just learn a chord by practicing it 1,000 times in a row, then I'm also going to learn a vocabulary word by practicing it 1,000 times. You can't learn vocabulary by brute force. You can, but it's not optimal, okay? And what I mean by that is, if you practice, if you use the same flashcard to practice one vocabulary word 300 times in a day, you will not learn that word as fast as if you practiced the flashcard 5 times and then allow your brain time to forget that word, and then come back to it again after having forgot it and learn it again. Okay? So let me repeat. It's better to forget the word in between and then learn it a second time than it is to practice that same word for the whole period. Okay? I hope I'm making sense. And there are psychological reasons for that. Okay? the fact that you learned it once, forgot it, and then had to struggle to learn it again is sending signals somehow to your brain that this is something that we need to start remembering, because we don't want to have to go through the whole process of forgetting and relearning again. Okay, the fact that you have to struggle to relearn it and put that much extra effort in to learn the word a second time helps you remember the word better in the future. So if you have 15 minutes to learn a vocabulary word, don't study that vocabulary word for 15 minutes. Study that vocabulary word for 3 minutes, and then then do something else in the meantime. And then 6 minutes later, study that vocabulary word again for 3 minutes, okay? Because literally, the act of forgetting that word is actually beneficial to helping you remember it better later. And that's why they have what they call the spaced repetition system. And there's a bunch of different programs that offer this. There's Anki, there's Memrise, I don't know, Quizlets or something. There's a bunch of different systems for what they call spaced repetition. And the key to spaced repetition is actually the space in between the repetitions. Okay, again, it's not beneficial just to keep repeating that thing constantly. You have to allow space in between for you to forget that. That's why it's called spaced repetition, because it's actually beneficial for you to allow yourself space in between to forget those words. Okay, he says, yeah, that's what SRS is based on, but it also depends on how practice is done, because if it's just reading over and over or writing over and over, then it's not so effective, but it is recall. Yeah, it's recall of the word is the effective part of building that memory in your brain. Okay, so, and it's counterintuitive because we think the more times I repeat it, the better I'm going to remember it. But it's not the repetition. It's the struggle and the effort that you put into remembering that word after you've forgotten it. So, so what most spaced repetitions do is they teach you a word, and then soon after they ask you to review that word, and then soon after that they ask you to review the word, but the increments are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, so that they optimize it so that you're always reviewing the word right when you're on the verge of forgetting it. Okay, now you don't want to completely forget the word before you review it again, and you don't want the word to be fresh in your memory while you review it again. You want it to be right at the point where it takes you a minute to stop and think. You say, I remember that word. What is it? I'm struggling. I'm putting in the effort. And then all of a sudden it comes back to you. That's the optimal time for you to review a word, right when you're about to forget it. Okay, but if it is recall, then it's very effective. Yeah, exactly. It's the recall of the word, and it's the effort that you put into recalling the word that makes it effective. Okay. Not rote repetition of writing the same sentence over and over, or reading the same sentence over and over, but if you read or write in different contexts, you learn. Yeah, context is also important. Which is why I really enjoy the, what did I do with my iPad? I really enjoy the repetitions that I get while reading, okay? Because then these vocabulary words come back to you again naturally, okay? It's not isolated in a flashcard. It's actually, these words are embedded within a body of other words that you understand. And then you start to see how words are used in real life. It's great. All right, well, this live stream has been going on for about a little over an hour. I think I'm gonna close it off here. So thanks for watching the stream. Like I said earlier, I did intend to actually create a video for you guys today, but it's just been busy with school. I'm gonna have to kind of spend a few more days, few more weeks figuring out exactly what my schedule is like this semester so that I can figure out the optimal times for me to make videos and post them. I'm still going to probably be trying to do at least 2 videos a week. I have mixed feelings about live streams because I feel like when I actually prepare a video, record the video, edit the video, and then upload the video, I can be much more concise about the points that I want to communicate. But I also don't get real-time feedback from people. So that's a nice thing about live streaming. Also, just for me as a busy college student, live streaming is just a heck of a lot easier because all I have to do is just go on YouTube and just click that live stream now button, and there's no preparation and there's no editing and nothing. So that's really nice when you have a busy schedule like me. And then on the other hand, I don't want to rely on live streaming as a crutch to the point where all of my videos are live streamed just because it's easier than actually recording and and editing a video. All right, Andy says, I just subscribed this week and I think this is your first video I've watched. Sweet. Well, thanks for subscribing. I appreciate that. And I'll try to watch more videos soon. Awesome. Okay, there was someone who advised the best way to get enough repetition is by using the monolingual dictionaries because most of the defining words are frequent. Yeah, because most of the defining words are frequent words and they are repeated over and over. Agreed. So, yeah, so that is my, just what's going on with me right now. Well, I'm on weekend now, so by Monday, you should be getting a regular video. Maybe what I might start doing is putting out actual videos on Monday, because that way I have the whole weekends to plan and to record and to edit and to upload. And then maybe on Fridays, I'll start doing live streams like this. So yes, so if you're watching this right now, keep an eye out next Friday for another possible live stream, because I love it when I have a bunch of people on here commenting and giving me feedback, and it's really great. And this is how I learned cool stuff too. Like I was learning about Luca. Okay, I'm not procrastinating. I'm posting videos on the channel I made similar to Esperanto channel of yours. Sweet, Rasmus A. Okay, sorry. So you have an Esperanto channel? Because if you are, I would be very interested in seeing that. If so, just send me a message or something. See, I'm procrastinating on posting. So I'm not sure if you actually have a channel or not, but just let me know. I guess for the rest of you, thanks for watching the video, and I'll be posting a video on Monday and maybe live streaming again next Friday. We'll see. Thanks for watching.